Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to a new video. If you are new here, my name is Zizi, and on this channel we make mainly lifestyle content in the form of vlogs, but every now and again we do a cute girl talk like how we're doing today. I just want to start off this video by saying a very happy new year to you and yours, and I pray that this year is a better year and hopefully we can come out of this plague and life can resume back to normal, and that this year is a better year for all of us. And if it's not a better year, then may we be better. So in today's video I want to chat about the process of getting married that I recently went through. For those of you guys who don't know, I recently got married last year in 2021, and I just thought to myself, there's probably quite a lot of black girls who may be watching my content, or even who are not necessarily like regular subscribers, but who are looking for like some tips on wedding planning, some advice on the Lobola negotiation, some also some slightly educational content on the whole process of getting married when you're black. And so that is the point of today's video. I'm gonna make this video basically have two sections. So first I just want to chat about my experience getting married and kind of the process that me and my now husband went through in order to become Mr. and Mrs. And then I also want to address the lots and lots of questions that you guys asked over on my Instagram. You guys asked me lots of questions about the cost of a wedding, how to plan a wedding, logistics around Lobola negotiations, prices of Lobola, all of those things. I want to try and address as much as I can in this video. It's going to be a long one, so I highly recommend that you make yourself comfortable. Go and get yourself a cup of coffee, a snack, a glass of, and so let's jump right into it. So as I said, I got married in 2021. For those of you guys who don't know, I actually used to live in Cape Town and I relocated to Johannesburg in 2020, August of 2020. And I mean, I've always wanted to live in Johannesburg, but the main reason it happened when it happened was because my then boyfriend basically told me that he wanted to marry me. Him and I had been in a long distance relationship for a couple of years, and we decided that it was time for us to get married. And so when he said, "Kuba baby, ndifuna ukuchata and I want you to talk to your mother and ask her to prepare your uncle so that my family can come, bazokulobola, that's when I decided, okay, you know what, this man is serious. Let's do this." And literally within a 3-month period of him saying that to me, I found myself a job in Johannesburg. I packed up my apartment, quit my job in Cape Town, and I moved basically to come and live in Joburg with my man. We didn't live together before we got married. We only moved in together after we said our vows. But nonetheless, I moved here in August of 2020, and then literally the following month in September, family yake wanted to come and like visit my family, to come and basically hand over a letter that says that Tebogo says that he wants to marry your daughter and sicela ukuzolobola. But because my uncles and none of my male elders live in Johannesburg, only my mom and my aunt were here. So then Debogo's family decided that Debogo's mom would be the one to come and basically deliver that letter to my mom and my aunt. So she came over, she met my mom and my aunt, and there was a letter that she came with that Debogo's parents, Debogo's dad had written, basically saying ukuba unyana wakhe ucela my hand in marriage and bacela a date where they can come bazokwakha ubuhlobo, to come and build relationship and build family and so forth, and ask for my hand in marriage. So she came, she had tea and lunch with my mom and my aunt. It was cute. It was cute. And then in October, literally the following month after that, that's when I kind of officially got engaged, and that's when I started to wear my engagement ring. This is it here. That's when I started wearing my engagement ring, and then my Lobola negotiations happened the month after that, so in November. And they happened at my uncle's house in the Eastern Cape, one of my mom's brothers. So that happened, and then we were meant to get married in February the following year, and we couldn't. Our wedding was set for the end of February in 2021. So August 2020 I moved here. September is when the letter was like sent. October I officially got like engaged, and then November was my Lobola negotiations, and then February the next year was when our wedding was supposed to happen. But unfortunately it couldn't happen because of the pandemic, and so we had to postpone it, and we postponed it to later in the year last year, 2021. And although we postponed our wedding, we still decided that we would go ahead and get married. And so we officially got married on the 1st of March 2021. We basically signed our home affairs documents, and we also said our vows in like a very intimate ceremony with just like very close family, and a pastor who officiated the service and our vows. And this took place at Debogo's my husband, by the way, at Debogo's home. I'm going to link the vlog for that somewhere in these cards. So that was the process that I went through, and then now I just want to go through some of your guys' Q&A. I'm going to start off with like pre-wedding Q&A, so like Lobola, the process, the logistics, the cultural practices, and then after that I'm going to address wedding planning, the cost of a wedding, etc. So this question says, would you be okay with a man taking a loan to pay for your Lobola? Okay, so this question, I can't say yes and I also can't say no. I guess it would just depend on the context of your relationship and where you guys currently are. If I was going off of impulse, I'd probably say no, mainly because I would always recommend that you minimize the amount of financial strain you put on your marriage, especially right at the beginning. And one of the things that can really put a strain on your marriage is debt. And so for that reason, I wouldn't recommend it. What I would rather recommend is that you talk to your family and try to figure out if you can bring down price Lobola to be as low as it can possibly be. If not that, then you rather negotiate with your family and maybe ask them if you can pay, if your man can pay Lobola yako over like a period of time. You know how in some cultures, but in other words, Lobola is never really finished. You can kind of take that approach and be like, mama, dada, ndifuna uchada, but unfortunately we don't have the finances for it right now. So ndicela maybe ilobola yam be paid over a period of like 2 years or over a period of 3 years. But I would much rather exhaust those options first before going and take out a loan. Like I said, it depends on the context, guys. And everybody's situation is different, so you'll have to just apply wisdom to your own situation. Okay. This question says, what is your advice with people who are planning to get engaged when it comes to finances? Would you advise they be upfront about their state of finance, or are they not obligated? Guys, even before you get married, like even before you start planning a wedding, you need to be open and honest about your finances. One of the biggest causes of divorce, guys, is money. I know that sometimes we say no, but I'm with him because I'm with him because, you know, we want to be together. But guys, money is very important. It's not the most important thing, I will say that. It's not the most important thing, but it is exceptionally important. Money is important for so many reasons, guys. Especially when you are a woman, you need to understand this man's financial situation. You need to understand how much he earns. You need to understand his relationship with money and how he budgets his money. You need to understand what his debts are, what his expenses and obligations are, what his hopes and dreams are with his money. Like, you guys need to talk about this stuff way before you get married. And now as well, you need to be very open and very honest with your man. And to be honest, guys, I wouldn't get married to somebody who I don't understand what his financial affairs are. No. If I don't know what your salary is, I don't know the total value of all of your debt, I don't know what your black tax situation and expenses are, as a child, we're not getting married. I need to know, because I need to know what I'm getting myself into. And I do understand, Shem, that for a lot of men this conversation is actually quite difficult. Even in my own relationship, I think probably like 6 months into my relationship, my husband kind of knew my entire financial situation. He knew exactly how much I earned, he knew where I worked, he knew what I did, he knew my black tax situation, he knew it all. But it maybe took just over a year for him to share that information with me. And so I understand for some people it may be difficult, but guys, like, don't back down. this conversation needs to happen. Even if it takes months and months and months and months of you guys arguing and fighting, eventually like this conversation needs to happen. So this question says, when did you do the prenup and what was the cost? So we signed our prenuptial agreement 2 days before we said our vows and signed our like home affairs documents. However, we drafted or like put together our contract and came to agreement on our contract about a month or two before actually getting married. We didn't pay, okay, we did pay, like 300 rand, but that's not actually the cost, guys, of putting together a prenuptial agreement. But my husband is an attorney and works in a law firm, and then he got one of his colleagues basically to draft a contract for us and to sit us down and basically talk us through it. Yeah, that's why we only ended up paying 300 rand. I think that 300 rand we paid was like an admin fee or something, but otherwise our actual contract we got essentially done for free because it was like a professional courtesy from the law firm that he works for. But we didn't have to pay anything aside from that 300 rand. How did you handle pressure from your own expectations versus pressures from your family? So fortunately, guys, I didn't really receive any pressure from my family. My mom and my aunt were quite like supportive of the entire process and they didn't put me under any pressure. We didn't really have much pressure. I guess the only pressure that we really received was around inviting certain family members, especially family members we don't really have a relationship with. That was the only real pressure that came from family when it came to our wedding. So for example, we wanted to have a wedding for about 70 people, but my in-laws weren't really happy about that because obviously like our families are quite big and they wanted to have like a lot of family members there. And the way that we kind of resolved that was that my in-laws actually ended up helping us with the cost of the wedding so that we could have a slightly bigger wedding. But without them helping us with the cost of like having additional people, unfortunately we're not going to be able to accommodate more people because we just didn't have the budget. So that was the only time where like we received pressure, but I'm glad that that pressure came with support. It wasn't just pressure and it came with quite a lot of support from my in-laws, and like we're really grateful for that. Did you discuss with your husband what comes first between the proposal and Lobola? Yes, we did. And so I wore my engagement ring and we got engaged before my Lobola happened, but after like my mom met with Tebogo's mom. So basically like his mom and my aunt met and discussed the fact that sizawutshata and ndizawulotyolwa, and they came to an agreement that they're all happy with that, and then Tebogo proposed. You get what I mean? And then my Lobola negotiations happened. But even then, because I wanted to wear my engagement ring, I first had a conversation with my mom and I asked her, Bamba, is it okay if I wear my ring? Tebogo proposed, is it okay if I wear my ring even though my Lobola negotiations haven't yet happened? And she was like, sure, mtanam. Sure. So yeah, that's what we did. We discussed it between the two of us, came to an agreement, and then I had a chat with my mom. What book did you read to prepare to be a wifey? I didn't actually read any books, to be quite honest, but we did do premarital counseling. In fact, we did 2 sets of premarital counseling. We did premarital counseling with my pastor from back in Cape Town, Pastor Chris, and his wife, and then we also did premarital counseling with Grace Bible Church, which is the church that ended up marrying us. So yeah, we did premarital counseling, and in the second premarital counseling that we did with Grace, we did have to go through like a course, but we didn't necessarily have to like read a book. It is not that I remember. I could be wrong though. It's been quite a while, so I could be wrong. How did you tell your mom or family that you are getting married? Yo, I'm so stressed now, and does it Sana? There is nothing quite as difficult, guys, as telling your mother or your parents that, especially when you're a girl, that ufunu chata and like you are getting married. So I completely empathize with you. I'm gonna put up a video. I made a video about how I told my mom, but I basically told her over WhatsApp chat. I told her over a message on WhatsApp. I created a WhatsApp group and I added her and I added my aunt, and I told them over WhatsApp because I couldn't bring myself to do it like live. But I'll link a video where I basically tell that whole story. Okay, so this question says about Komi, can they include slash be your mom or aunt instead of uncles if you don't have male figures in your family. So this girl is basically asking, but if you don't have male like elders in your family, can the people who do your lobola negotiations be like women, like your mom, your aunt? So the short answer to that is yes, they can. I'm Nguni, so a lot of the Nguni cultures, lobola negotiations are only done by men, and those men are typically like your uncles, maybe older brothers, cousins, like basically older male figures in your family. However, with Botswana, which is what my husband is, it's slightly different in that Bona, they do like a combination of men and women. So it's both like your aunts and your uncles that do your lobola negotiations. So yes, I do think women can do the lobola negotiations, but these are conversations you're gonna have to have like upfront, just so that you don't offend your family and you don't offend your husband's family as well. And let's also remember, guys, that culture is not set in stone. Cultures and like cultural practices are created by people, and so they can be altered by people, and we are people. You know, so nothing is set in stone. Yes, there are like norms, cultural norms, but I feel like there's nothing that can't be discussed, and there's nothing that can't be fixed. If you don't mind, can you share the marriage type you chose and the reason? So we chose an anti-nuptial agreement with accrual. So we are married out of community of property with accrual, and we chose this because we felt that this was what was basically best for the both of us financially, but it was also more so for my protection as a woman and who's going to basically make most of the money. I'm not saying that you should choose this contract for yourself. I'm not saying that. Please go and speak to an attorney, go and speak to a financial advisor. But after we spoke to our attorney and we explained our situation, what our core goals and plans are, this was the one that was recommended to us, and I was happy with it. So yeah, that's why we chose it. When did you first consider yourself married? After lobola signing or the wedding day? We considered ourselves married after we signed our home affairs documents and after we said our vows, and we discussed this prior. So like I said, my lobola negotiations happened in November, and then we signed our home affairs documents in March and did our vows in March, and then we had our wedding only in October the following year. So we considered ourselves married when we signed our home affairs documents and when we did our vows. So this question says, what happens if he doesn't meet the family demands in terms of the lobola? Guys, this is actually a very important question. Yeah, you need to prepare. Don't go in blind, guys. Don't go in blind. Do your research and prepare. So what I did now, guys, with this whole process of getting married is that I first spoke to my cousin who got married about 3 or 4 years ago, Ukunjulwa. I basically spoke to her and I said, Mdase, ilobola yako yayimalini, and what was the process? And she was the perfect person for me to speak to because one, we're in the same family, we're around about the same age, and also like she's a girl, I'm a girl, and on top of that, the same uncles that did her lobola negotiations were going to be the same uncles that were going to do my lobola negotiations. So she was the best person for me to talk to. So I spoke to her, and then this is after Deboho and I basically spoke, and he let me know what his like affordability is, how much money he had saved up for this whole process. Then I went and spoke to my cousin so that I could make sure what my husband has got saved up and what my family's expectations are can meet, you know. So Okunjula told me, and then I spoke to Utewoho, and then I went and spoke to my mother, because Umama was going to be the one that speaks to my uncles. I knew that I couldn't go directly to Omalume and be like, so rather I chose to have a conversation with my mom and with my aunt. And at first I think my aunt was kind of like taken aback, because I remember her saying, oh, so now and I had to like try and have the conversation in the most like light-hearted and most respectful way that I could, because I obviously didn't want to wrap them up the wrong shoulders. But shame, they both took well to the conversation, and they both like understood. Yeah, so I had the conversation, and I basically asked Mama Ndicela, like in lobola yam ibe within this bracket, and then umama went and relayed that message to my uncles. So I honestly think that you must not go into this process blind, if possible. I know that everybody's situation is different, and not all of us have the luxury of being able to have those types of conversations with our moms and with the women in our family. But if you can, please don't go in blind. Talk to your mom, talk to the women in your family, and get them to then speak and negotiate with your uncles before this whole process starts. Okay, did you guys pay for family that had to travel? Yes. All the traveling expenses that were associated with our Lobola negotiations came out of me and my husband's pockets. So all of his family members, all his uncles and aunts who traveled, he paid for the fuel, he paid for the car, he paid for their accommodation, he paid for the food that they ate. And likewise as well, guys, I paid for the car, I paid for the fuel for when my aunt and my mom had to travel, and me and my friend Unamhla, I paid. It basically came out of our pockets. How were the expenses split? Like I said, Deboko paid for the travel of his family, I paid for the travel of my family, and then I paid for the catering. So obviously on the day after the Lobola negotiations, the families sit and they have lunch and so forth. So I paid for the catering, I bought the food, and then me and my friend Unamhla and my cousins Uzananda and Tembele, we basically cooked the food. But yeah, I paid for it. Uteboko paid for the travel of his family, their accommodation, transport, food, and then he paid for the booze that was drunk on the day of the Lobola negotiations. Hi Zizi, how do I speak to my family? But I not to ask for an insane amount from Umtuam. I just answered this question, so please rewind and go listen to that. This is important, guys. This is important. Yeah. Since your families are so far apart geographically, how many physical Lobola meetings were there? There was one. There was one, and we made sure that there was one because, guys, those travel expenses were a lot. I think combined, all those travel expenses, we probably spent like over 20 grand just on like the logistics of travel. So there only had to be one. It wasn't going to work for us to have more than one, because how many 20,000s were we going to take out for our families to be traveling up and down, up and down? So we had one meeting. Okay, so this question is a bit of a controversial one. So it's your view, what's the maximum bride price that you think is fair? No, you looked beautiful. So guys, this question is tricky. I do believe in the custom of Lobola. I genuinely do. I think it is a beautiful thing, and I think it's a very nice gesture for the groom and his family to do that for the bride's family. But with all of that being said, Lobola is a gift. You are not being sold to your in-laws. Your in-laws are giving a gift to your family. I can't say exactly how much Lobola has to be at the maximum, because I do think that is very subjective. It's a very subjective, and it's dependent on so many things. It's dependent on the affordability of the groom and his family. It's dependent on the financial situation of the bride and her family. It's dependent on whether this money is going to be used towards the cost of Lobola, if it's going to be used on the cost of amabaso and buying basically furniture for the bride for her to take when she's going to her in-laws. Like, it's determined by so many things. So I can't say Uguti like what is like the maximum. It honestly depends. For some families the maximum is going to be 10,000. For other families the maximum is going to be 50,000. For other families the maximum is going to be 100,000. But with all that being said, guys, I do think it's very important that we don't exploit each other, and we don't exploit the family of the groom and the groom himself, because ultimately, like, I just want to see young black couples getting married, and when Lobola is too exorbitant, it acts as a barrier. It truly acts as a barrier and makes it more difficult for young black couples to get married. And it's not that asifunu chat, it's that as afford Lobola. That is the reason why I sing a chat. But I do think that you as the bride, if you feel that your family is being too exorbitant, you need to speak up. So you will have to decide for yourself what exactly does exorbitant look like, and then you will have to speak up. Like I always say, that if you feel like you're grown enough to get married, because literally, guys, if you're gonna tell your parents that you are getting married, You're basically telling your parents that you are a grown woman now, and you are a woman that can manage her own household, that can manage her own family. It means that you are ready to have sex, and your parents will know about already for ucansi, and you are ready to have your own children. That's what you're ultimately saying to your mother and father, that you are ready to do those things, and you are going to do those things. So if you are able to say that to your parents, you must be able to also stand up and be like, Ma, Baba, this is a lot, and unfortunately we're not going to be able to meet these type of expectations. This is what we can do. But always try to obviously have that conversation in the most respectful and most honoring way that you know how. Did you guys discuss how much lobola should be before including family? Yes, we did have that discussion. Did you sign your marriage contract before or after ilobola? It was after ilobola. How did you and hubby split the cost? So my husband paid the entire lobola by himself. He paid for the travel of his family to the Eastern Cape. I paid for the travel of my family to the Eastern Cape, and I paid for the catering. And then when it came to the wedding, we both paid for our wedding. He paid for the majority of the wedding, but it was a shared expense. This question says, Manja, do I buy him a ring or he buys it for himself? To be honest, I think it's a nice gesture to buy your man a ring, girl. It's a nice gesture. Just do it. And the nice thing with men's rings, guys, is that men's rings don't have stones and diamonds and whatnot. They're very simple, so they can be very affordable. Literally, if you budget like 5K, you can get him a nice ring, like a really nice ring. So it's a nice gesture. I didn't pay for Tebogo's ring. He bought his own ring, but I do think it's a nice gesture, and I do wish I had done so, but I didn't. What is your advice on taking loans for ilobola and wedding related costs? I don't think this is a good idea. Like I said, I do think that there are other workarounds that you can create between you and your partner, but also I know that kusemhlabeni apha and things are contextual. I would never ever recommend that you take out a loan for like the purpose of having a huge extravagant wedding. But if you've paid for most of your wedding but you've gone slightly over budget and you just don't have the money even in your savings to cover the shortfall, and there's no family that can help you with like an extra 5 to 10 maybe 15K to cover a shortfall, then I guess it's okay to go and take out a loan to cover that shortfall. With ilobola, like I said earlier on, you rather negotiate with your family to have a lower lobola price, or that your groom pays ilobola yako over an extended period of time than for you to get into debt. Because guys, like, one of the things that really strains marriages is finances, and one of the things that will strain your finances is debt. How was the lobola process handled, given that you two are from two different cultures? Did you have to compromise on certain processes? You're my favorite SA YouTuber. Thanks, honey. So like I said, Tebogo and I are from different cultures. We're both like South African, but different cultures. But I do think the fact that we're both from South Africa, our cultures have a lot of similarities. The one difference that does exist between our cultures is that in my culture, lobola negotiations are only done by men. Women do not like directly participate in that process, whereas in Tebogo's culture, both men and women participate in the lobola negotiation process. But I guess because I'm the bride, Tebogo's family was quite like accommodating. Although his aunts did travel and were part of like the delegation for ilobola, they didn't actually sit in the room and participate. One of my aunts basically went into the room where everyone had gone into and basically asked his aunts if they can come out of the room and come and join them in the living room. And then they basically had tea and coffee and chatted while the men sat in the rondavel and basically negotiated. So that was the compromise. But Tebogo's family was quite like accommodating. I don't believe that they took offense, at least not that they said, they didn't communicate that they took offense to that. But yeah, I guess that was the one compromise that happened. Also, Tebogo and I decided that there would only be one day to our lobola negotiations, and that was because of the logistics that basically surrounded like the travel and the cost and so forth. It wasn't going to make practical sense for us to Garcia, Eastern Cape and Joburg. And also, we didn't do the whole gifting ceremony and process, also because of cost and logistics. And fortunately, Shem, we spoke to both our families and they were quite accommodating and understanding, but we decided not to do those things, not because as a Hloniphe we don't respect those practices, but because we just didn't have the resources, and the logistics were just going to be too difficult, and it wasn't that like important to us to do that, and so we didn't do it. Stay together before or after Lobola, and how did your families handle that arrangement? So Utebogo and I never lived together before we got married. We only moved in together the day we said our vows and signed our home affairs documents, which was on the 1st of March 2021. That was the very first time we slept in the same bed. That was the very first time we did certain things. So yeah, and also we decided that we would only be married once we said our vows. So after we did Lobola, we still didn't consider ourselves married. We considered ourselves like betrothed, you know what I mean? There's a promise that has been made, our families are in agreement, now we're just waiting to say our vows, basically. I could be wrong, but I think under African customary law, in order to be considered married, you need to have like paid Lobola, and for it to be acknowledged by both families that you guys have paid Lobola, and you need to have some form of like celebration, and then you are considered married. So we hadn't had any celebration, so I even doubt that even under African customary law we were actually considered married. The next question is like a pretty good and important one, and it was quite relevant to me. So it says, in terms of Lobola, if you have a single mom and your dad's family isn't involved, can your mom's family, okay, she says, can your mom handle the negotiations? Yes. So now my father is not in the picture in my life, and so I essentially belonged to my mother's family, and they handled my Lobola negotiations. Not my mom herself, but my uncles, her brothers, handled my Lobola negotiations. What to prepare when the guys started coming for the first time in terms of Lobola negotiations? Okay, I guess the first interactions between Tebogo's family and my family was when his mom came to drop the letter. And in that situation, basically me and my sisters just cooked for them and we served them tea and scones. It was very simple, and like they spent the day together, basically chatting, getting to know each other, sipping tea, having scones, having lunch, that kind of thing. When Tebogo's uncles though came over for the actual like Lobola negotiations, the real preps we did was that we obviously made sure that the house was clean and presentable for the in-laws when they are arriving, and then we cooked up a storm. My friend Unamhla and my two cousins helped me with all of the cooking, and so did some of my aunts. They also helped with some of the preps for the day when they were coming. So you basically treat that day like how you would having like very important guests, you know what I mean? You know, if you have like very important guests coming over to your house, you make sure your house is clean, you cook a nice meal for them, it was that kind of thing. Some people make it like an actual event where they hire a tent and tables and decor. We didn't do that. We didn't have a budget for that. Okay, we didn't have the budget for that. We just did like a lunch, basically something very simple, and they sat in the dining room, and they are like around a table, and we served them. Okay, here's another really good question. So this one says, how do you politely bring up the Lobola conversation with your man without sounding needy or desperate? You just need to say it, sis. Like, you need to say it, especially if you guys have been together for a long time. This is what I did as well. Tebogo and I had been together for a couple of years, and I always knew that he was going to marry me because he promised that he would, and he's a man that keeps his word. So I knew that he was going to do it, but it was just taking a little too long for me, child. It was taking a little too long for me. And what I chose to do is that I just chose to ask directly before I got annoyed. So don't let yourself get to a point where you're now like annoyed about, you know what, this is taking too long. Rather ask. And what I did now was I basically outright asked him. I said, my baby, we've been together for this amount of years. And then I kept quiet, and I think that kind of like lit up the light bulb in his head about, oh yeah, I did promise this girl that I was gonna marry her. And then literally within like a couple of months he made it happen. So I literally brought that conversation up around Jan of 2020. Yeah, Jan 2020, and by like March, April, he was basically sitting me down and saying, Lobola at the end of this year, and we're gonna get married. Go and speak to your mother and tell her to gather your uncles. Yeah, boy. And then literally 2 months after that, or 3 months after that, I found myself a job in Joburg. So I was the one who brought it up first, because I was just like, this is taking a little too long. This is taking a little too long. I think it's perfectly fair to like ask those questions, guys, because you need to know, this is your youth. Okay, so if somebody is eating your youth and spending your years, they also need to kind of answer these questions. I think it's only fair for them to be able to answer those questions and not make you feel guilty about it. Sometimes it will bring up a little bit of conflict, but you know what, conflict is part of life. Okay. It's part of life. You guys will get over the conflict. If you feel like the question needs to be asked, the question needs to be asked. I don't like the whole notion of when a woman wants clarity on a man's plans to marry her, that she's needy or desperate. No, especially if you made it clear to him, and jolly for fun, ne, dijolela umchato, and and just by girlfriend permanent. If he knows that that is the type of woman that you are, and he chose to be with you knowing full well that that's the type of woman that you are, he should be able to answer your questions. When your boyfriend paid Lobola, should they pay also for the venue? What do you mean the venue? As in like the wedding venue? Or do you mean the venue where Lobola happens? Typically Lobola, guys, happens at home, like at your parents' house or one of your uncle's houses. So I'm not sure what you mean by should they pay for the venue. I guess if you're having like an event for like a celebration, that's kind of like a wedding, so you would cover those costs similar to how you would cover wedding costs. Would it be wrong of me to tell my family not to go over a certain amount for Iloba? No, it's not wrong, but you need to be respectful and you need to be tactical, but it's not wrong at all. What determines Lobola price? It is thumbsucked. I'll tell you that now for free. Like, Lamale, guys, is thumbsucked. It is thumbsucked. People can be like, no, it's depending on your education and how. No, thumbsuck. Guys, obviously, like, your family will gauge from other families in the community, other families that are at the same financial level as they are at, how much Ilobola would be. But guys, there is, like, you're not selling a product. You understand? Like, this is a gift. Ilobola, you gift as 10 you seem to. You know, you can't be like, cost of sales 10,000, operating costs 40,000. Tony, this is how much profit is left over, and then determine. No, there's no such thing. There's no such thing. I really believe by Lobola is thumbsucked. Okay, and then the final like pre-wedding question is, would you help your partner finance the Lobola or man's on his own? No. I'm just Lobola. That's what we're not doing. Okay, that's what we're not doing. But guys, obviously, like, to each their own. Isn't this Teta in this video are not gospel truth, okay? I'm a human being and I do things according to my own context. So now I apply wisdom and do things according to your own situation and your own context. But let's now jump into like wedding specific questions, not just Lobola and pre-wedding things. How did you decide on your final venue? When is it cheaper to get married? Okay, so there's two parts to this. So we viewed 6 wedding venues, and we didn't choose the cheapest venue, but we chose the nicest one that was still within our budget. So we set a specific budget and said, but this is how much we want to spend on a venue, and then we chose the one that we liked that fit into that budget. And when is it cheaper to get married? It is cheaper to get married in the winter. So winter months, venues are cheaper, guys. They can even be like 50% cheaper to get married in the winter. And also it is cheaper to get married on a weekday. So we actually got married on a weekday. We got married on Friday. So it's cheaper to get married on a weekday than it is to get married on like a Saturday or a Sunday or a public holiday. Right? Wedding dress shopping. What boutiques did you visit and advise on buying or hiring? So if you are considering the most cost-effective thing, I would say hire. But guys, don't think that hiring is cheap. When I looked into hiring, I think the quotes that I got was somewhere between 5 and 10,000 rand to hire. I ended up buying my wedding dress because I just felt like the difference between hiring a dress and buying an affordable dress were not too different. So hence I opted to buy my dress. I only visited basically 2 boutiques. I went to Bride & Co, and then I also looked into Zodwa Bridal, and I decided to get my dress from Bride & Co. where do you start with the wedding planning? I think the first place to start is with a budget and speaking to other people around you who have gotten married. That's what Deboho and I did. We spoke to a couple who's like friends of ours who got married maybe about 3 years or 4 years back, and they were kind enough to basically share their entire wedding budget with us so that we could be able to gauge on what costs what and what are like the key items where we can how we can basically allocate our money and what's reasonable to spend on a wedding. After figuring out how much a wedding costs and figuring out our own budget, we then went and looked for a venue, and we specifically wanted a venue where we could get the venue and we could be able to have both the ceremony and the reception at the same place, so we were not traveling, and it was also important for us to be able to have catering done by our wedding venue. What can we cut down to make budget meet and still have an amazing wedding? To be honest, the biggest determinant, guys, of your wedding is the number of people that you have, because you pay for everything per head, everything, which is why, like, don't invite people you don't want at your wedding to your wedding, guys. Don't do that, because you're probably coughing up anywhere between like 1,000 and like 2,000 rand per person. So trust me, if this is not like, if you want to cut back on wedding costs, don't invite people that don't matter to you. Don't invite people you don't have relationships with. Don't invite people that you know that beyond your wedding day you're never going to speak to ever again. Don't. Unless you are willing to spend 2,000 rand on that person, don't invite them. Another place where we tried to cut costs was on alcohol. Alcohol is very, very expensive, guys. So what we did is that we just offered like the first round of wine was on us, and then we were going to have a cash bar, but we didn't actually end up having a cash bar because my father-in-law basically paid the whole alcohol bill for the wedding on the night. So if you want to save money, cut back on the alcohol. I think, like, yeah, cut back on the alcohol if you want to save money, but at the same time also know that alcohol is quite important at a wedding. Alcohol is important at a wedding, child, so choose wisely. And this question says, wedding venue, what to look for exactly. Like, do we go for venues that offer everything? To be honest, I would say yes. At the same time, you're probably not gonna find a venue that's gonna offer you like everything. They can offer a lot, but they're not gonna be able to offer every single thing that you need. So you might still need to get like an external DJ, an external photographer, or a band if you want a band instead of a DJ. Like, there are some things you're gonna have to get externally, but I will always say get a venue that is going to give you the chapel and the reception venue, both of them. Otherwise there's gonna be the traveling, and like that, not only is that going to cost you more money, but it's also very stressful on the day. And then you're gonna have family members that don't have cars, so you're gonna have to transport them to a different venue as well from where your ceremony happened. So I will definitely say, get a venue that's going to give you both the ceremony and the reception in the same place. And then secondly, get a venue that's going to do your catering as well. Yeah, I would highly recommend that, because yeah, those logistics, guys, working with so many suppliers is incredibly difficult. And then if you can get a venue that is also can do your decor and is good. Oh guys, I've been filming for so long, I literally had to take a lunch break. Oh, here's your hand. Saturday I'm filming video. Anyways, let's continue. Did you have a day of coordinator? No, but my MC, after a friend of mine who I asked to be my MC, she was quite helpful during the day. My bridesmaids did a lot of work during the day in kind of like coordinating the situation, instructing people what to do, but also the venue where we had our wedding, there was like a day coordinator who was basically managing the logistics of the day, and that just came with the venue hiring price. How much overall can one budget for a wedding celebration? This, guys, can really vary. It all depends on what you choose to do. So if you choose to have like a wedding, a white wedding at a venue where you are basically hiring out everything, you're hiring the venue, you're hiring someone to do your catering, you're hiring someone to do your decor, etc., etc., you're not going to spend like less than 100 grand. And also remember that a wedding is also determined by the number of people that you have. So weddings, guys, weddings are expensive. Let me just say that. You could make a wedding happen for like 100,000 rand. You could, but it's going to be difficult. It's gonna, like 100,000 rand is quite tight. Like it's really tight. So you're gonna have to like finesse your mind out in order to make it work within 100,000 rand. Ideally, if you are having like a small-ish wedding, so maybe like 80 to 100 guests, I'd recommend 150 to 200k for like a relatively modest wedding. If you're gonna have like a more extravagant wedding with the same number of people, you're looking at anywhere between like 250 all the way to 500,000 rand. So it just depends, to be quite honest. But can you make a wedding happen for 100k? Yes, but you're gonna have to do a lot of finessing. Like, in fact, I'm even scared to say you can make it happen with 100k, because I feel like our wedding was relatively quite modest and there was no way we could have made it happen on 100k. It was just not gonna work. How much did you spend on your wedding, since you are a budget guru lady, or are you literally went out for your big day? I didn't go all out. My husband and I did what we could afford. Let me say that. We did what we could afford, and we did what was within our lane. We literally did like what was in our lane and what we could afford. We didn't go all out. If we had more money, we would have done more, but we didn't. We literally did what our pockets could afford. How much do my partner and I need to save up for a white wedding? This honestly depends on the type of wedding that you want to have. If you want to have like a very modest wedding, I'd say maybe 100,000 rand. If you want to have like a mid-range wedding, I'd say maybe like 200,000, maybe 250. If you want to have a more extravagant wedding, like you're looking at like 300k, 400k. So it honestly depends on like the type of wedding that you want to have. I do think probably the minimum that you would need for a wedding of about 80 to 100 people is like 100 grand. But even then, like I said, it's tight, guys. 100k is tight. What was your wedding dress budget? Did you try on other silhouettes? So I initially actually wanted like a fitted dress, like a mermaid type of dress where it's fitted, and then it only flares at the knees. But I couldn't find a dress like that looked nice on me. And I wanted that because of the type of shape that I have. So my body is like hourglass-ish, where like my waist is smaller than like my hips, like significantly smaller than my hips, because my hips are quite wide. So that's the look I wanted, because I felt like it would look nice on me, especially because bodycon dresses usually look quite nice on me, but I couldn't find one that looked great on me. And so I opted for a ball gown that was like fitted at the top and then flares out from the waist downwards. And I was really happy with that type of silhouette. I didn't buy my own wedding dress. I think I've mentioned in like an Instagram story that my mom paid for my wedding dress. But when I chose my wedding dress, I hadn't yet asked mama to buy it for me. So what I did is that I chose a dress that I knew that even if my mom didn't buy me my dress, I would still be able to afford it myself. And the dress that I essentially chose, I think it was initially, I bought it on sale, by the way. I think it was initially like 16k, but I paid like 12. Yeah, I bought it on sale. But wedding dresses, guys, like I guess with most things in a wedding, you can buy a wedding dress for 5,000 rand, you can buy a wedding dress for 50,000 rand. So the budget for a wedding dress is quite like wide, and you just have to go according to your budget, basically. The number of guests at your wedding, we had 120 people. What inspired your wedding theme? I don't even know if I had a theme. I just chose like a particular color palette, and I just wanted white and like ivory, white, in fact white/ivory with like gold hardware, and then greenery. And the greenery only came from the plants, so we didn't have like green tablecloths or green napkins or anything like that. we just had white and ivory. Even my bridesmaids dresses were ivory. They were the same color as my wedding dress. And then we had gold hardware, so things like our cutlery was gold, and then we had greenery, which was from like the plants, the natural plants that are outside, and then the plants that were used in the decor. And I guess I like that type of aesthetic. It's quite like simple, and I felt like it was going to be easy to execute and relatively affordable to execute without it looking tacky. Yeah, because I just felt like if I have too much color, then I have to spend a lot of money on the decor pieces and the elements of the decor. And because if I don't spend enough money or a lot of money, and I opt for the cheap things, it's gonna end up looking tacky if it's like bright and colorful. It's like with neutral colors, you know, when you wear neutral colors like creams, whites, blacks, grays, like very, very neutral colors, it's easy to look chic and like, you know, put together, even if you're spending very little money. Whereas the moment you start wearing a lot of color, you need to make sure that whatever you're wearing is very good quality, because it can look tacky very quickly. So I had kind of the same mindset with my wedding. I felt like if I choose simplicity and neutrality, I can make it happen on a budget. Yeah. Okay, so the cost involved to have a wedding. Okay, some of the things you need to pay for a wedding. You need to pay for a venue, you need to pay for food, you need to pay for drinks and maybe booze if you choose to serve booze at your wedding and pay for it. You need to pay for decor, you need to pay for your dress, your husband's suit, your rings, your makeup, your hair, where you guys are gonna probably spend your wedding night, or even the accommodation the day before the wedding. Because for example, me and my bridesmaids stayed at the wedding venue the day before the wedding. There's a cost associated with that. And mind you, the decor is not only for the reception, it's also for the chapel or the ceremony. You pay for things like chairs, you pay for flowers, you pay for cutlery, crockery, you pay for vases, you pay for napkins, like everything, guys. Everything has a cost, everything has a cost. Any tips on where one can save money? The do's and don'ts. Don't invite people you don't want there at your wedding, because you are paying per head. Opt for a cash bar in terms of the booze. Like serve drinks, like soft drinks and non-alcoholic drinks, because those ones are relatively affordable. But opt for a cash bar. That will save you a lot of money. If you don't want to do a complete cash bar, you could do a part. Like, so you could say about each table gets like 3 or 4 bottles of wine. Anything that you drink outside of the wine is on your own. Or you could just maybe provide the wine and the beer, and then people, if they want things like brandy, whiskey, or savannah, or things like that, they pay for it out of their own pockets. That's another way you can save money. Opt to use the cutlery, crockery, and linen that is offered by your venue. Typically, when you hire out wedding venues, the cutlery, the crockery, and the linen is typically included in the cost of hiring the venue. So opt to use what they are giving you if it's like good enough, instead of hiring out. Because guys, when you hire out cutlery and crockery, you pay like literally per fork. Yeah, well, you pay like, so you know how like it's set up, will typically have like 2 forks, 2 knives, and like a spoon, or like 2 forks, 2 knives, and 2 spoons. You pay for each and every single one of those things. So I would highly advise that you use the crockery and cutlery. Even with the plates, you pay like, you get that you have the plate for your starter, you pay for that plate. You have this plate for your main course, you pay for that plate. You have the dessert bowl, you pay for that plate. Even with the glasses, you pay for the white wine glass, you pay for the red wine glass, you pay for the water glass, you pay for the champagne glass. Like, you pay for everything, guys. You literally pay for everything. So if you can, try to use the cutlery, crockery, and the linen. By linen, I mean like tablecloths and napkins that are offered by your venue. Sometimes they're not that nice and you just have no choice but to hire out, but Try to pick a venue that has nice cutlery, crockery, and linen. Rather do that. Do bridesmaids pay for their own dresses and makeup? This is also dependent on what you decide to do and what your bridesmaids are able to do. I paid for my bridesmaids makeup. My mom paid for my bridesmaids dresses, but they did have to incur like other costs on their own. So they paid for their own shoes, they paid for their own travel fees to come to the wedding, and they also had to pay for their own hair. Yeah, so it just kind of depends. I decided to do it because I didn't want me getting married to be too much of a burden for my bridesmaids. Inevitably, they did end up having to spend quite a bit of money out of their own pockets, but I intentionally paid for their dresses and their makeup because I wanted them to look beautiful on the day, but I didn't want them to feel like this was so much of a burden, especially because they also had to travel to like come and attend my wedding. Was the number of guests 50-50 or adjusted depending on family size? It was adjusted depending on family size. Diboko's family is much bigger, and also he was basically inviting two sides of his family, so his mom's side of the family and his dad's side of the family, whereas now I ain't got no daddy. You know, and my father's family is not present in my life, so I only had my mom's family to invite. So majority of the people that were like the family members that were at our wedding were my husband's family. Also, because my family lives in KZN and the Eastern Cape, and the vast majority of Diboko's family lives in Gauteng, a lot of my family members didn't come to my wedding because of travel. So that's how it ended up being that most of the guests at our wedding were my husband's family, or most of the family members were my husband's family. How did you choose individuals who will assist with everything? So to be honest, my husband and I planned our wedding on our own. The one person that did help quite significantly was Unamhla. I mean, other people pitched in there and there. For example, one of Diboko's friends helped us with a budget for the wedding. My in-laws pitched in financially quite a bit to help us with the wedding as well. But in terms of like the planning of the logistics, finding decor, deciding on colors, finding dressmakers and whatnot, Unamhla did a lot of that work. My friend Unamhla did a lot of that work with me. How did you fund your wedding? Completely out of our pockets, and then where we had a shortfall, my in-laws covered that shortfall for us. And the main reason why was because we were initially going to have a small wedding, but they decided to help us so that we could have a slightly bigger wedding. Yeah, that's how we funded our wedding, completely out of pocket, from our salaries and from our savings. How can I become a helpful friend during the wedding planning process without seeming to be forward? If you are a bridesmaid, it's fine. I honestly think that's the best. That's what Unamhla did with my wedding. She just was faka, and she just kept asking me lots of questions. She would ask me, by where to, have you found flowers? Where to, have you decided on this? Have you decided on this? Have you found the DJ? Have you sent the DJ music? Have you done this? Have you done this? And consistently every time we would speak, she would basically ask me about, hey, are the invitations done? Which picture are you going to use for your invitation? So zfage. But if you're not a bridesmaid, I think talk to her and say, my friend, I really want to help you with your wedding. I'm so excited that you're getting married and I really want to help you. Please tell me how I can help. And even if she's not responsive the first time around, keep asking over and over again. Yeah, I got a lot of help from Unamhla for my wedding, and I'm very grateful because I don't think I would have been able to like do it without her. Does the bridal party pay for their own dresses and suits, or everything is paid by the couple? Most people that I've heard who got married, the bridal party, so like the bridesmaids and the groomsmen, paid for their own stuff. So they pay for their own dresses, their own suits, their own makeup, their own travel, etc, etc. I decided to split some of the cost with my bridesmaids because I understand that being a bridesmaid is very, very expensive. And I remember when Upelo got married, she covered quite a lot of the costs associated with me being her bridesmaid, and I was very, very grateful because at that point in time when she was getting married, I didn't have the finances to be able to cover everything that I needed to cover for the wedding. So she paid for my dress, I think she even paid for my travel, and I just had to pay for my hair, makeup and shoes. Yeah, but she did everything else. And so I kind of wanted to give my bridesmaids a similar experience, to pay for like things that were like really big so that it doesn't feel like it's a burden on them. And then with the groomsmen, I can't even actually remember how my husband did it. I think he gifted his groomsmen with bow ties, waistcoats, and socks, and then they had to get their own shirt and pants. Yeah, I think that was the arrangement. I can't remember correctly, I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, I'll correct it in the comment section, but I think that's what he decided to do. So now, like, he decided to gift his groomsmen with some of the items, but some of them they covered out of their own pocket. And then similarly with my bridesmaids, I paid for the dress, which was like the biggest ticket item, and I paid for their makeup, and then they paid for their shoes, hair, and travel. Who pays for the wedding? Both families, or the husband's family, or the bride's family? I have heard that the bride's family is the one that pays for the wedding. I think that's how white people do it. And with us as black people, I think Imali Lobola typically goes to the wedding, but that wasn't the case for us. My husband and I paid for our wedding, and then my husband's parents helped us, but the vast majority of the cost of the wedding came from our pockets. Did planning the wedding all by yourself cause you some sort of anxiety? Yes, a lot of anxiety, like a lot of anxiety. Which part of the wedding was the most expensive? I'd say the two most expensive items on our wedding was the food. That was the most expensive thing, and then the decor. Your wedding venue was so beautiful. Was it in Cape Town or Johannesburg? My wedding was in Joburg. We got married at Kloofzig Lodge and Spa. I'm gonna link it in the website in the description box below. That's where we got married, and it's quite affordable, guys, that venue. What was the budget for photography? So we used a company called Black Matter Media. Yes, that was the company that we used for our wedding photography. There's lots of wedding photos on my Instagram page, so if you are wanting to see some of their work, go onto my Instagram page and scroll through to my wedding photos. I think we paid about 20,000 rand for photography and videography, like together. Did your bridesmaids chip in for their own cost? Yes, they did. They paid for their own hair, their own shoes and travel. I paid for their makeup, their manicures and pedicures, and their dresses. Do you have any regrets about spending money on a wedding when you were already married? No, I don't have any regrets. I did think I was gonna have regrets, to be quite honest. I thought I would have regrets, but truly speaking, I have no regret. I honestly feel like that was such a joyful day for me and my husband, our friends and our families, that all of the money and all of the stress that went into it, that it was worth it. It was worth it. And also the money that we spent there, we're gonna make that money back. You know what I mean? We're gonna make it back again, but those types of memories, we're never gonna be able to create them again. And this is not to say that, like, I think Abantu should have weddings at all costs, because there's many other times in your life when you can create great memories, but how often are you going to be able to have both sides of your family together and all of your friends together in one room, dancing, singing, drinking, and like having a good time? When else are you gonna have a situation like that? But yeah, I don't have any regret. I did think that I would have regrets, because I've always just felt like, spending money on a wedding, you know, but I don't have any regrets, truly. Did you opt for venue supply suggested services, decor, example decor, and was there any benefits? So she's asking, did I opt for the suppliers that my venue recommended? So when you hire a wedding venue, guys, they'll typically recommend some suppliers. So they'll recommend photographers, they'll recommend DJ, decor people, etc., etc. We did use their recommended list. So for example, our decor person was recommended by the venue, our DJ was recommended by the venue, our photographer, I literally found our photographer and videographer on Instagram. But the reason why we ended up using a DJ and the decor person from the venue wasn't necessarily because we wanted them, but we were just running out of time, and I didn't have time to go and find and look for and meet up with, etc., like other decor companies and DJs. So we just went with what the venue recommended. What compromises did you have to make to ensure you didn't go over budget? We didn't pay for alcohol. Well, we did pay a little bit for alcohol, like just for wine, first round of wine, but I had hoped that we'd be able to like basically pay for champompo, pay for wine, pay for beer, savannas, whiskey, and all that. We couldn't do that because we didn't have the budget, but my father-in-law actually ended up paying for it. So that was a compromise that I had to make, that we couldn't really pay for a lot of booze. And then another compromise that we had to make was the number of people we could invite, because we had to invite people according to our wedding. The decor that I wanted was not exactly what I wanted, and that was also because of budget, but it was also because my decor person was actually just bad. She was actually just bad. I would not recommend her, but it was also influenced by budget. I think that if I had a bigger budget and I had more time, I probably would have found a completely different decor person altogether. But those were some of the compromises that I made. We also made a compromise on the venue. So the venue that we initially wanted was the venue called Tabaya Batswana. It's where Kwesta shot his Ketile music video, and I think his music video was actually his wedding day. So it's where Kwesta got married. If you guys know that song, Ketile, I went Ketile. So that video, that venue that's in that video, that's where we wanted to get married, but it was just a little out of budget. So that's also a compromise that we made, that we chose a cheaper, still beautiful, but cheaper venue than what we had initially wanted. How do you find service providers and their costs? Everything seems inflated. So one thing you need to know, guys, is that when you are paying for a wedding, the minute you say wedding, everything becomes more expensive. The photographer is going to become more expensive because it's a wedding. The cake is going to be more expensive because it's a cake for a wedding. The decor is going to be more expensive because it's decor for a wedding. So the moment there is wedding attached to something, the prices are inflated. But with that being said, how you would find, literally just approach suppliers and get quotes. That's what I did. Like, find maybe a list of like 5 to 10 different suppliers for everything that you want. Find like 5 decor companies or decor people, find like 5 different DJs and 5 different photographers, and look at their work, shortlist the ones that you really like and get quotes, and get the quote that fits within your budget. Yeah, things are inflated, guys, because having a wedding is not cheap. Okay, apart from how beautiful your day was, would you do a big wedding again, i.e. stress and finances? Our wedding wasn't really big, to be quite honest. We only had like 120 people there, so it wasn't really big. Like, big weddings have like 200 people, 300 people. So our wedding was quite like small and intimate. And would I do it again? 100%. 100%. Even when I consider all the money and stress that went into it, yes, I would do it again, and I would keep it a small wedding like how it was. I wouldn't do a wedding bigger than what we had, unless we had like the budget. But with the budget that we had and the time that we had and the energy that we had, I would do my wedding the exact same way, except for my decor. Can you cap your entire wedding at 50K? For 50K, you probably need to have your wedding at home, if I'm being quite honest. Yeah, you need to have your wedding at home. You're not going to be able to have a wedding at a venue for like 100 people on 50,000 rand. It's not possible. In fact, I don't think even 50K would be enough to cover food and drinks. Yeah, I don't think you can, unless you have a wedding that's like at home, or you have a wedding for like a very small number of people. Things you splurge on that were not necessary. The cake was so unmemorable, guys, and like, people didn't really eat it, to be quite honest. So I think if I were to, but that wasn't really a splurge, because we had such a simple cake. I'll put a picture here. We had such a simple cake, and I think we even spent less than 5 grand on it. So it was quite simple, but I do think the amount of money that we spent on it was a lot. And I don't think I would get a cake again. If I was having a wedding again, I wouldn't get a cake, to be quite honest. Like, I don't think there's any costs that went into my wedding that I regret, except for that cake, because I feel like that cake was useless. I think everything else that I paid for was necessary. Yeah, everything else that we paid for was necessary. Are thank you gifts necessary? If you mean for your wedding guests, I don't think so. I don't think they're necessary. Those are like usually party favors. No, I did think about doing party favors for the wedding, but when I watch wedding planning videos, a lot of like wedding planners were saying, but it's not necessary, save your money. People don't even notice the wedding favors. Sometimes people forget their wedding favors before they leave your wedding, so it's not necessary. So if that's what you mean by wedding gifts, then I would say no, they're not necessary. But you could give gifts to people that helped you on your wedding. So people like your bridal party, the pastor, your MC, you know, people like that who are literally doing you like a favor by being there. Those people you can get gifts for. How much did it cost? And I'm caught up between buying a house and having a wedding. Guys, in case you haven't noticed, I'm not going to mention the cost of my wedding because I don't think that that information is relevant to this video, like for me to explicitly say I spent this amount of money on my wedding. But to answer the second part of your question where you said I'm caught up between buying a house and having a wedding, this is tricky. Buy a house, girl. Buy a house. Yes. How long does it take to plan for a wedding? You can plan for a wedding in 3 months, yeah? I promise you, you can. But just know that you are going to put yourself under an exceptional amount of stress. I would recommend that you give yourself like 6 to 12 months. That would be like ideal. How long did it take to save up for your wedding? So a portion of it we paid from savings, and that maybe took us about a year to save, and then the other portion it was pay as you go. Pay as you play. How do you allow family to contribute but still put boundaries in place? I think, sure, this is tricky. I think I was just fortunate. My in-laws, like I said, my in-laws did contribute, but they are not like forceful people at all. So they still let me have like the wedding that I wanted. And in fact, my mother-in-law over and over and over again would say, would always say, this is Zizi's day. This is Zizi's day. So you need to let her have whatever she wants. Whenever like my husband wanted to do something or my father-in-law wanted to do something, oh girl, she had my back, and she was always reminding them that this is my day. So I don't know how to advise you, girl. I'm sorry. Because how does one choose guests to avoid many people coming? To be honest, I would say that if you haven't spoken to somebody in the past 5 years, even if it's a family member, don't invite them. Don't invite them. If you guys are no longer on talking terms, and if you know that you're gonna see them at your wedding day and then you're not gonna see them probably for the rest of your life, even if it's family members, don't invite them. Another thing that can help you to choose your wedding guest list is think to yourself, would I be willing to take this person out and spend 1,000 rand on them for dinner? Would I be willing to do that? And if your first response to that is hell no, don't invite them. Because that's essentially what you're doing. You're taking them to a really nice dinner and you're paying 1,000 rand for them to eat dinner with you. So you can do that. Another thing is that the only people at our wedding who had +1s were like married people, with a couple of exceptions, because there were some family members who like we kind of felt guilty about saying no to them for their +1s, but we didn't give people +1s unless it was their spouses. And we did this not because we didn't want people's boyfriends and fiancés there. We did, it's just that we didn't have the budget. Yeah. What was the biggest splurge? Was it worth it? The decor, I think, was the biggest splurge. I would say, and the food actually. Yes, I would say that they were worth it, mainly because I don't think there's a way around it. Like those two items are just expensive, and the decor that we had, the decor person we had was actually very, 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 very affordable, but it was still a lot of money. And the quotes that I got, I remember, guys, like I got a quote for decor from one of these like popular Instagram decor companies for like 100K, just decor, like 100 grand. So the lady we had was quite like affordable. When planning your wedding, did you also take into consideration your honeymoon, or you'll do it later? So initially we did want to go for a honeymoon, but we ended up not doing so, mainly because we basically spent all our wedding budget on the wedding, to a point where we didn't have any money left to pay for a honeymoon. But on top of that, we also didn't have any leave days, so we couldn't take leave either. Anyways, we had to literally immediately go back to work. But we are still gonna have like a vacation honeymoon thing probably sometime this year. Yeah, and wouldn't want to like go into debt for the purpose of a vacation, because we have our whole lives to go on vacation. Yeah. Okay, please share the details of all the vendors you used in your wedding. So my venue was Kloof Lodge and Spa. In fact, I'm just gonna link them all like in the comment section. I'm gonna link all my supplies in the comment section. But my venue was called Kloof Lodge and Spa. the decor company, you know what, I'll still put it in, even though I wouldn't use her again, but I'll still put her details in there. I forgot the name of the company, but I'll put the details in there. They did a decent job. They just didn't execute exactly how I wanted, but they did a decent job. The DJ as well was a recommendation from our venue. I will link the DJ in the description box in the comment section. Our photographer, like I said, was a Black Matter Media. I highly recommend that photographer and videographer. I'll link them in the comment section as well. Catering was done by our venue. My makeup artist, yes, my makeup artist is another person that I very highly recommend. BK, on Instagram she's BK_makeup artist. I think that was BK was probably my favorite vendor or like supplier favorites. The makeup artist, the hairdresser, and the photographer, and the venue. Those 4 things I would definitely recommend. My hairdresser was Deborah from Renee Debut. I think that's how you pronounce her salon. I'll also link her in the description box. I'll put a picture here of what my hair and makeup looked like. But yeah, if I think of any other suppliers, I will link them in the description box or the comment section. How did you juggle viewing of wedding venues, as some venues have a fixed schedule? We did our venue hunting on weekends. Yeah, we literally just phone our venues, book an appointment, and then go. Like, we'd book an appointment for like 10 a.m. on a Saturday morning, and then we'd drive there and just go view the venue. Yeah, is it best to get a wedding planner or plan everything yourself? If you can afford a planner, I would highly recommend that you get a planner, because planning a wedding is exceptionally stressful. What type of savings account do you recommend for saving for a wedding? It depends on how far your wedding is. If your wedding is happening within the next 12 months, literally a very basic interest-bearing savings account, or like a money market unit trust fund if your wedding is happening in close proximity. But if you're still like a single girl, you don't really have a boyfriend, and you are hoping that you'll get married in the next 5 to 10 years, put your money in some balance funds, girl. Put your money in some balance funds, put your money in some equities, but not like individual equities, but like equity funds like ETFs and unit trusts. But if your wedding is happening soon, don't put your money in risky things like shares. Please don't do that. Put it in very low risk vehicles like basic interest bearing savings account at a local bank, or like a money market unit trust fund at Coronation or Adam Gray. Hey sis, is it okay to ask for financial help from members of the family, or the couple should soldier on with it by themselves? I think it's perfectly okay to ask for help from your family, but ask for help from family members that you trust and that you know would have a heart to help you. So for example, your parents or your siblings. But even then, you are asking. You understand that you're not telling them, Kuba, you must cover this, and accept that like they could say no, or they could just not be able to afford to. Even if they wanted to, they could not be able to afford to. But in my opinion, the cost of getting married is your cost, unless your family opts to help you. And I think it's perfectly okay to ask them to help you, but don't have an expectation that they should help you, if that makes sense. How far in advance can one start saving? I recommend that you start saving as soon as possible. If you are an adult and you know that you are a person who wants to be married, start saving now, child. Start saving now. Which is best between a wedding venue versus an at-home wedding? Cost, decor options, etc. Getting married at home is going to be cheaper, guys. It's going to be cheaper because, one, you're probably going to have less people, because at home you can only accommodate so many people. The catering is probably going to be done by your family, so you're not going to have to be paying a whole catering company or a venue to be doing your catering. And there's like zero venue cost. I mean, you have to hire a tent, but I can bet you that hiring a tent is much cheaper than paying like for an entire full-on venue. Okay, and then this is probably the last question that I'm answering because I am tired. But this question says, did your budget fit in everything you wanted, or did you go slightly over? We did go over, not slightly, but by quite a bit. By quite a bit. I think we realized that our budget that we had set was actually quite unrealistic, and so we had to make some adjustments. We did end up going over, but it wasn't over by too much because my in-laws, like I said, ended up helping us. But yeah, we did go over. And Upeloga, a friend of mine, told me this when I was planning my wedding. She was like, okay, I know you're budgeting this much, but maybe like budget an extra like 10 to 20% on top of what you are currently budgeting, because a wedding is expensive, and there's going to be unexpected costs that you don't anticipate. So I'm going to end this video here so that I can start editing it, and hopefully it can be up sometime next week. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't gotten a chance to watch my wedding day vlog, I'm going to link it in the cards up here. Please take some time to watch it. I think you'll enjoy it. I enjoyed putting it together, and it's basically a vlog of my whole wedding day. I really hope that you found this video helpful if you are in the process of planning your own wedding or hoping to get married somewhere in the near future. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to click the red subscribe button and the notification bell so that you get new notifications every time I post a video. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Bye.